Hello and welcome to Paradigm Playbook, a podcast for entrepreneurs in the business of sports. Your hosts, Dave Kozak and Steve Cook, are business owners, successful entrepreneurs, sports enthusiasts, avid readers, and longtime friends. For years, they've read every business book on the market and built successful companies with what they've learned. This podcast will give you the critical takeaways in just 15 minutes a week. It's a quick and easy playbook for building a winning sports business. And now, here are your hosts, Dave and Steve.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Paradigm Playbooks Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Kozak, alongside my co-host, Mr. Steve Cook.
Morning, Dave.
It is a good morning, Steve.
It is.
What's the subject today?
Today we're going to talk about leadership and being the great team person I am, I'm going to let you lead.
Oh boy. So, I think there's a lot to unpack on leadership. And, I'll start with my most favorite picture about leadership, which I think will kick off this conversation. I have a picture hanging on my bulletin board in my office, and on the top picture, there's a guy behind a desk. The desk is on I don't know if it's a dolly or a plank, and there's three people out in front, and they got over their shoulder and they're pulling the desk along, and the guy's pointing, kind of like march forward. And then in the picture below it, there's four guys out in front, the leader being out in front of it, and the desk is empty. And it's the idea that, as a leader, there are different ways to lead, by example, by decision making, things like that. But the idea is you have to be there with your team and be the leader necessary in whatever the environment is, right?
Yeah, I think it all starts with differentiating management from leadership.
100%.
So if we can agree that they're not the same,
yep,
and they take different skill sets, and I think the number one. So there's two things I think you need to be a good leader. One is you have to go first.
Yep.
So the leader, like in your picture, the leader's out front, so you go first. The other thing is you need followers. So you can go out front all you want. If no one's following, then you're not a good leader.
Yep.
So I think those are the keys. And how many books have we read on leadership where we dig into this topic? And there's, I maybe one or several of the best leadership books were written by Simon Sinek. I think he did great. Stephen Covey, Brian Tracy,
John Maxwell.
They're all great. But Simon starts in his first book, Start With Why, is that, what great companies do, that where a company is leading is they know why they're doing something. Mm-hmm. So it's not how they do it or what they're actually doing. They're not selling cars, but it's why they're doing that. So I think if you're going to, kind of boil it down to a person, it's the same thing. Is why is that person doing it? One, if it's to inspire or move someone, that's great. If it's to manipulate them, then I think that's a negative, and that's not a leader. That's a manager.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say all managers manipulate, right? I don't think that was what you were trying to say.
No, I wasn't.
The key difference to me between a manager and a leader is a manager is responsible for activity, responsible for reporting, responsible to ensure things are progressing. A leader may do those things as well, but a leader is the person that makes those in rank and file that have the job want to do the job. I think that's the key.
Yeah, so
you make people want to do their job as a good leader.
So you're inspiring,
correct,
rather than telling. So, and manipulate is a strong word. So, and I wasn't trying to say that leaders don't manage, because they do.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. And I use manipulate a lot, and I use manipulation a lot. Manipulation comes with a negative connotation. I don't think it's meant to have a negative connotation. It just does have a negative connotation. To me, inspiration and manipulation are hand in hand. The manipulation part is when if there's trickery involved. The inspiration is no trickery, end goal. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. So I think in a lot of instances, I've manipulated situations before where somebody had a way they wanted to do it, and I didn't step up and say, don't do it that way. I let them do it that way to manipulate the situation. Say, are you ready to listen now as to how we really should do it? Right. So I think there is some of it in leadership in its own right.
And those that say they don't manipulate probably have never been parents.
Yeah.
So, and so it's not a bad thing. And you can manipulate thought with words, and it's still leadership. If you're going in the right direction with a good purpose, then that manipulation is more of an education process than anything else.
Agreed.
So one of the other things that Simon Sinek said, and maybe it was his second book, I'm not sure, but in
Leaders Eat Last.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I got your back.
Let me try that again. Leaders eat last. And the whole idea, and it was a story about Nelson Mandela's father, I believe, who would go to the tribal meeting and sit there and not give his 2 cents on the topic until everybody else had a chance to speak. So the eating was a metaphor for speaking. Mm-hmm. So if you let everyone come into a meeting and give their opinion, then you're a leader by opening up the conversation. If you come in and state your objective, then you're making it harder for others to give their opinion. So maybe you're manipulating them there rather than allowing them to form and them kind of come around to your way of thinking or you to theirs.
Yeah. And I think there is no exact way to lead in every situation. And so, Steve, my point in saying that is that, there's some times where I come into a meeting and it's like, this is what we got to do. This is how we're going to do it. March. Right. Mm-hmm. And then there's other times where guys, we need to figure this out. So let me get your thoughts. And I can then process everybody's ideas and thoughts, and then I can make a decision. One of the things that I think is a critical component of leadership is decision making, because very rarely, and I think right now we're experiencing it more than ever. Decisions are hard, and leaders have to be able to make decisions, and they have to be able to get the information they want to be able to make the decision necessary to move forward, to move backwards, to take a step back, to progress, to diversify, whatever it may be. I think that's one of the characteristics that I most value in leadership is decision making.
So it's interesting. I was just listening to a broadcast by Seth Godin, who does remarkable things in marketing and leadership. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions he asked is on decision making. And he said, he goes into a workshop and he says, tell me a great decision that you made this year. And what you find is that people respond with great results, not necessarily a great decision. So like I won $5 million in the lottery. So that was a great decision, but it was a lucky decision. That wasn't a great decision. So that's not what he's getting to. But if your decision inspires or teaches others or leads them down the path you want them to go, then it was a great decision. So I also think a great leader that makes great decisions enables other people, in his downline to also lead towards great decisions and to think about it. So, I mean, it's a pretty tough question. What was a great decision you made this year is, it's hard of, and could it be something that failed, or could it be something that you just, Steve Jobs always says, the best decisions he ever made is all the things he decided not to do. Yeah. So a lot of it is, denial or decision not to do something.
Correct, but a decision nonetheless, right?
Yeah.
That is an interesting question on decisions, and I want to reflect back on the point you made about the kind of downline decisions. One of the things that I've tried to teach my employees in decision making is there are certain decisions that will always have to come to me to make, that are for the direction, the benefit, the health of the company, things that have consequence that only I should be responsible for. I think one of the things I've really inspired in my organization is any other decision, I'd rather you make it and tell me you made it Tell me why you made it. And if it was right or wrong, I don't care. We'll fix it if it was wrong. If it was right, kudos to you. You get the credit. I think that's another thing that I want to talk about with leaders. Here we go again. Leaders eating last. I try not to take credit for anything.
Yeah. So, I mean, the key to a good leader is take none of the credit, all of the blame.
Taking the blame.
Take that, and as a leader of others, you reprimand in private and praise in public. They're all good things. So I think leadership has become more difficult over time because there was a blind obedience in the workforce, 30, 40 years ago, and it's not there now. So today's younger professionals are more intuitive, more questioning, and in some cases more purpose-driven than we were in the past in old days. And so you have to understand that your leadership has to create progression for those within your organization. So I think Daniel Pink is the one who says, what people want is autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
Yep.
And if through your leadership you can give them autonomy, let them achieve mastery for a specific purpose, and if your purpose is in alignment, throughout the company, then the whole ship is sailing in the right direction. Everybody's pulling that empty desk.
Yeah,
so I think it's good.
No question about it. The idea that leaders eat last is both real and metaphorical.
Congratulations on spitting that out.
Thank you. I got it that time. In all contexts, right? What a good leader will do, and this is from a podcast I did on the College Knowledge podcast with Dr. Kenyon Bonner, who's the Dean of Students at the University of Pittsburgh. His motto when asked at the end of the podcast was, I think his favorite expression he said was, lift while you climb.
Okay.
And I think that is just a great metaphorical reference to, like, the leader should be the one climbing the mountain, trying to get to the top. And all along the way should be bringing people. And what I've told the gentlemen and ladies for that matter in my organization is that I want to be out of a job every day. That's my goal, is to get other people to take the job I have today so that I can do the job of tomorrow. And that job of tomorrow may not be there. And this is where I talk about leadership requires thought about where you are today, the situation you're in, and how you have to lead through that situation. Sometimes I've had to lead by just putting my head down and doing the work. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I've had to lead by having and inspiring others to do the work. But at the end of the day, you have to be cognizant and recognize the situation you're in and what type of leadership is required there. But I think at all points, you should be lifting people and trying to elevate them to the best of their ability, thereby making your ability even better, right? And that's that lift while you climb concept.
I think I just finished a book called Multipliers.
Mm-hmm.
And the point in Multipliers is that great leaders multiply the talent of everyone within their organization. So that would feed right into your, put me out of a job now. So you have to think about that in how you do it. One of the exercises that they gave in that book is try to go into a meeting and the only thing you're allowed to say is a question.
Mm.
So the meeting will progress in a different way if you're only speaking in questions, because and it still may turn out to be your idea at the end, and you can lead through questions, but you can accept or deny with a question. So, but it's building the decision-making ability of those within your organization.
Yeah.
I also so this isn't just an interesting question. I have no idea, no opinion. What's the proper size of a meeting?
In people?
Yeah.
Well, I think you have to define the parameters of the meeting first. Is it a presentation? Is it a decision-making meeting?
Well,
is it
no, in a business meeting? So we're not talking a seminar or workshop or anything like that. We're just talking a general meeting where we're going over, we have an agenda, 3 items, and it's a 45-minute meeting. And the reason I bring it up is because I think in the discussion at the conference I was at last week, they were saying, well, I think it's 8 to 10 is the max to get involvement within a meeting. So if you want to lead a meeting where people are involved, now if you're in a meeting where you're just disseminating information, then it's a talk, it's a keynote, it's a speech, and you're out in front. But if you want to get involvement and raise up the level of those participants, maybe there is a max number. I don't know. It was an interesting topic.
Well, I think that goes to the other question. I've heard organizations that they limit all meetings to 60 minutes. They limit all meetings to an hour and a half. Like, what are you trying to achieve in what period of time? I know that in corporate America, and I won't talk about which corporations or how I know all this, but there is death by meeting.
Yeah.
Where you can meet about meeting and never get a decision and nothing ever progresses and everybody's job's just meeting. And you waste all day in meetings and you get no productivity. So one of the things that we certainly try and do in our organization is limit meetings. Limit internal meetings. Is it something that could be done in an email, right? You've seen the meme, this could have been an email.
Yeah.
Well, then just send the email, right? And I think that's a leadership quality, to understand what needs to bring the team together and what needs to just be communicated.
So I think that the topic is, are you trying to disseminate information or gather information?
Mm-hmm.
So a meeting is good for gathering information or coming to a group consensus or decision. If you're just trying to disseminate information, here's what we have to do. Yeah, maybe it can be done on
and I like
email.
the idea that has developed recently is that you have different types of meetings, right? So, you have your drag out 90-minute meetings, you have your 60 minutes, you have your 15-minute huddle sessions where you're just kind of keeping the finger on the pulse and everybody marching in the same direction. So I think part of just being a good leader is having some good organizational methodology to how you operate your business, right?
Yeah. And so as you know, I'm kind of escaping in the clutches of corporate America right now. So I'm still in that process.
Does it feel good?
But it kind of does. Yeah. But one of the things that they have, those meetings evolve to where they're less productive the longer the meeting goes, which means it's why they take it. And this is a big thing in corporate world now, is that you get to the point where, hey, if we're going to accomplish anything, we have to go to an offsite. So an offsite is something that corporate America is doing all the time now. And that's the only purpose that I can see is to get people to shed the inhibitions of being in the office. So you're going out there. So I want to get your real opinion. So let's go offsite or off the record or, all that.
Yeah. To me, offsite, I've done it on several occasions. Usually that's big when I'm planning. When I'm doing business planning, I try and find a decent space where I can spread out that's different than the everyday conference room, that's different than the everyday desk space. Because I want one of the things that happens, especially in entrepreneurship and small business, is like, just because your door's closed doesn't mean that everything stops when you're working on a particular project. So you really are left to deal with everything that does come your way. And, a quality entrepreneur is going to have to take on an awful lot of different things at different times, right? When I was talking about that, knowing what leadership is needed at different times, like sometimes you're in a decision making. Sometimes you got to go and you got to look at the numbers in the books and you got to analyze. But I think that a bigger point that I'll make is the more you talk about things, it can have there is a kind of, I don't know how to say it best, but analysis paralysis can take hold.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can analyze and you're looking at, and you could spend a week and you come to the same decision you would have made in 10 minutes. looking at it without digging in? Is it I'm trying to prove this out to myself or something?
Yeah, and sometimes those decisions, you're better off doing that alone as well. Sometimes you get that, and how often have we said, I got to make a decision, I'm going to have to go for a walk. Yep. So you think about, and I like the story of Steve Jobs when he was trying to attract Scully to come run the company for him. And it was every meeting they had was walking the campus, the Apple campus, which was different. And I think it was his way of getting him in the right frame of mind. And then, so I love the final comment that Jobs used to change his mind. He said, seriously, you're going to spend the rest of your life selling sugar water to try to attract him away from Pepsi. And so it's in presentation too. So I think that's all part of leadership and your style and how you speak. And I also believe that good leaders are good storytellers. So where they can tie the purpose into what they're doing and where they're leading them.
And I think there's a component of good leaders are also good salespeople in some respect, where they have to be able to have good recall to events of past or situations of past, to be able to lay out like a parameter in front of their people. So it's like, hey, remember when we were here, very similar situation, what's the right call there? And when you, as a leader, oftentimes when you know the right answer, one of the best things you can do is not give it.
Yeah.
And that's a tough thing to swallow, but decisions I could make in 5 minutes, sometimes I make people struggle with for a couple weeks. Mm-hmm. Because what they learn in that process, they don't struggle again after that.
Right. So that's leadership. I mean, that's enabling someone else to make a decision that you could have done quickly is leadership. So I think there's a lot of that. So, if you want to kind of circle the wagons and bring leadership, to leadership is your ability to help people grow, and that growth mindset for others is leadership. So it's what great teachers do, what great business leaders, great managers, and the best of the best, the huge leaders out there are the ones that are leading people maybe to a conclusion or a place or a level that they didn't think possible on their own.
Yeah, there's another quote on my bulletin board, and I'm probably going to botch it, but it's something along the lines of: a good leader can tell you how to find success. A great leader can teach you how to find that success in yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and obviously leadership is something that we can talk about forever. Yeah. Yeah. So, but I think it's fun. And I think, and maybe a topic for another day is how to evaluate people, and do they have the ability for you to lead them and coach them into the growth that you want. I think it was Warren Buffett that said, I think the 3 or 4 qualities that you want in every leader or employee is intelligence, hardworking, creativity, and integrity. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have integrity, the rest of them don't matter, because you just have a hardworking, smart, creative crook.
Yeah.
So I think so you have to identify the people, and then once you know, then it's your job to get them to where you want them to be. So that's leadership.
I think there's a big component of communication in leadership as well. And I want to be clear on my comment there. A good leader doesn't have to be a great orator, doesn't have to be a great writer, doesn't have to be all of those things, but they have to be able to get their message, vision, and mission across to others, mm-hmm. In a sound enough way that inspires those to follow them. So to be a good leader, you have to have a good following. That's for sure.
Yep. Otherwise, you're just jumping in front of a parade.
That's right.
Okay.
All right, everybody. That's Paradigm Playbooks Podcast for today on leadership.
Thanks. Make it a great day.